to have you with us tonight. I've got Nigel Paterson. He's from Cycle Talk magazine, or what once was Cycle Talk magazine, and we're going to talk about, well, I guess, how did it all start? Like, how old were you when you had? Well, did you have an interest with motorcycles at a young age? Is that how it led to the magazine? And
yeah, I suppose so. I got to ride my cousin's bike when I was, I suppose, pre-teen. And then at 15, I remember ringing up a bike shop and asking how much the latest and greatest motocrosser was. And at that stage, it was 300 a week's pocket money. So that never happened. So I had to wait until I was an adult before I started riding at 17. But yeah, I had a bike licence before I had a car licence, and I was a motorcycle courier. And then at age 23, I packed up as much as I could on a motorcycle and moved from Perth to the east. I came over for 2 years, and I've been here for 30-something.
Oh, so you came here for 2 years.
Haven't really come back. Haven't really gone back home. I've obviously been back to see the family and things, but I've never moved back to Western Australia. I just settled in the east and stayed here ever since.
So did you have a desire to have a magazine at a young age, or was that, how did that come about?
No, I loved reading them. So I would devour motorcycle magazines. From age 16 onwards, I'd read 3 or 4 a month. Yeah, I bought American ones, I bought Australian ones, I bought British ones. I loved reading them.
Did you keep them? Like, you know how some people kind of like...
No, I did for a while. You know, there'd be a pile in the dunny and they'd be floating around. But once I moved to Sydney, I spent 15 years in Sydney. I moved around I lived in about 20 places in 15 years or something crazy. And so every time you move, you'd throw things out. Magazines would go. But no, I never thought I'd work on one until I started having ambitions to be a professional photographer, and I was taking a lot of pictures and spending all of my money on photography. In those days, of course, mainly film and processing. Photography, motorcycles, and women. That was it. That was my whole budget.
That was enough.
Yeah, that was enough.
Well, you didn't get paid that much back then.
I couldn't afford to drink. I couldn't afford to drink on top of that, so I didn't drink for a long time because I was spending it all on the photography and riding bikes. I'd go to bike rallies, and I didn't own a car and just rode bikes everywhere.
So what did you do with the photography? Was that a job or?
Well, it was a little bit. I worked in the photographic industry, so I sold cameras for a little while in a camera shop. Did a few weddings back in Perth, and did other bits and pieces of work that came up where I could get it. And then back in '89, which was the year I moved across, I got some photos of some guys crashing at the World Superbikes. It was Fabrizio Pirovano and Malcolm Campbell had a big crash together. I managed to get a couple of shots of it, and I sold them to Rev's Motorcycle News. And then from there I started to become a bit of a contributor for photography. Would go to the races and take some photos, and then got roped into writing some stories to go with them, which was a bit tough because I had no idea. And then
see what you learnt on the way.
Learned along the way, and then got offered a job as a news editor on a magazine, and which was like, hey, you know, I've barely written a word, you know. But, you know, it turned out the editor really wanted someone who could go to the races, take the photos, write the story, understand the bikes, understand racing. I'd done a little bit of racing back in Perth. I did one season. I ran out of money. So I'd done a little bit of racing, so I had a little bit of credibility in you know, knowing, you know, what the levers do on each side. And so I'd been on a racetrack. I could take photos, and I could talk to people. So that was how I got the job. And
like, how long were you in that job for?
Well, that job eventually only lasted about 12 months, because the company that owned Rev's Motorcycle News at the time also owned Two Wheels. And they had a staffing issue on Two Wheels, and they decided that Rev's...
That's a magazine.
That was another magazine.
Like you are talking to a girl here, you know.
So Two Wheels was a very, very popular magazine. It was started in 1968, and they had a staffing issue because one of the staff there had left, and they were struggling to find the right person to fill that role. and management decided that Revs had too many staff. So I got shuffled across to Two Wheels, and I worked under one editor there, Mick Paterson, for about 12 months or so, no, about 10 months I think, and then he decided to leave, and Jeremy Bowdler took over, and I worked for Jeremy for another 6 years before I left to start my own magazine.
So how old were you then?
Must have been about 32, 33.
Married and children?
No kids. Well, was married by that stage, and then we spent 2 years getting the magazine established with living off my wife, and then we did a bit of a role reversal, and I started taking a wage because she had our first child, and we just grew the magazine from there with various partners coming and going who helped me out, and various staff and contributors, and just tried to build the magazine, build the business.
Did your wife have an interest in motorcycles then?
A little
or
bit.
At all now today?
Yeah, a little bit. She didn't have any interest. Well, she claimed to have an interest in motorcycles before we hooked up, but she'd never ridden one. She'd never learned to ride.
Oops.
But she did learn to ride, and she actually rode a scooter to work for a couple of years, and but then she stopped riding after she fell pregnant, and she's done very little riding since. But yeah, we spent our honeymoon on a motorcycle around New Zealand. We toured Germany for a week or 10 days when she was pregnant with the second one. So yeah, she still gets on a bike every now and then, but nothing like that.
Obviously, you know, I mean, it's fun being on the bike. I love being on the bike myself. But so then did you even contemplate having a magazine? Like, did you ever think you would have your own magazine?
Not until I'd been working for other people on magazines for a number of years. I'd seen some magazines come and go. I'd seen editors come and go. I'd seen how the business worked. The coming digital technologies meant that there was some really interesting things going on in that space. And when I say digital technologies, I don't necessarily mean what we think of it now in Facebook or YouTube. I just mean things like having a desktop scanner so that you could scan photographs, for the cost of the scanner, which was in those days, I think I paid about $1,000 for my first Nikon film scanner.
Wow.
And so once I'd started the magazine, I could actually shoot film, and then I could scan those and get everything ready for production with desktop publishing, which wasn't new in those days, but it wasn't as mature as it is now, obviously. But the idea of creating a magazine at home in those days was still fairly cutting edge. It wasn't bleeding edge by then, but it was still fairly cutting edge. And it was those sorts of things like being able to buy a scanner and scan the negatives that made it affordable. Prior to that, you needed much more expensive equipment, much more staff and infrastructure and all that sort of stuff. So magazine production up until that, I would have said the mid-90s, so we started as in 99, and I would have said up until the mid-90s, it was very difficult to do it without fairly big backing. So it was what they call a high cost of entry business. So to get involved, you had this high cost of entry. I mean, in those days, a big screen to edit the pages, to build the pages, could be $5,000. So by the time we were doing it, prices had come down a fair bit. But it was a friend of mine set up a magazine back in probably about 95, and for his graphic artist, he spent $20,000 on the computer. Wow. For the software, the computer, the screen, and a printer, and I think he spent 20 grand. And that was a hell of a lot of money in those days.
So did you run the business from home?
Yep. For the first 5 homes.
Wow.
So we started it, and then we moved 4 times, 3 times to rental properties. So we had 3 in Sydney, and then we moved up to the Hunter Valley to Newcastle. And then, so we rented up here what we were looking to buy, and then we bought a house, and we ran it out of this room that we're sitting in right now for about a couple of years, I think, and then we...
So you don't need much space, like you didn't really need, or you did, but you just didn't have it.
We grew out of the space. Yeah. So this room is something like 30 square metres, and at one stage we had 3 people working in it.
Wow.
And it was very cramped and very noisy. And then we'd made enough, we were doing enough business to afford to rent some premises. So luckily up here in Newcastle you can rent a light industrial unit for not a lot of money, and we could certainly afford it, and we did that for 10 years. We had a light industrial unit not far from here, and we had plenty of space.
So how many people did you end up having working for you?
At one stage we had 8 of us. We started a boat magazine as well in 97, and it turned out that the peak of the US stock market was the month we launched that magazine.
Oh, wow.
12 months later we closed that magazine down because the boat industry sank without trace. It really collapsed. So the boat one was a great idea that was 10 years too late. It was really well received when we kicked it off, and within 6 months it just looked like there was not much chance of survival, and I think we lasted 8 issues on that, because by the time those 8 issues had passed, it was the boating industry was just in freefall, absolute freefall. It was horrible for the people involved in the boating industry in those days. It was terrible. Motorbike industry didn't suffer anything like as badly, and in fact, Cycle Talk peaked in 2010, and before its decline started, and its decline didn't happen because the motorcycle industry went bad. Its decline happened because everybody not stopped, but the market was putting more and more time, money and effort into digital and less into print.
So how many copies would you print when you're in your peak?
45,000.
45,000, that's fantastic.
And
out of a room like this, and...
Yeah, well, at that stage we were at the other premises, but we'd do 45,000 copies of 80 odd pages. I can't remember the maths on that, but at one stage I did the maths years before, and we were printing 9 tonnes of magazines a month. And that would be a lot more than the 45,000.
Did you bring family in to work with you?
Well, my kids were too young. My wife worked for us for a little while when we first started, but we quickly decided that if we wanted to stay married, that probably wasn't a great idea.
Yeah, you got a lot.
because she thought I was a terrible boss, and I thought she was a employee that wouldn't take direction. So
you didn't give her a good reference, in other words.
So no, well, she was working full time as well. So she was more than happy to hand over the role she was doing, which was basically helping the graphic design and helping to build it.
That's a big job, though, the graphic design work.
Yeah, it is a big job. So she was helping with that, and so we managed to hire part time first, and then eventually a full time graphic designer to do all that. And,
so what was your role in the actual business? Like, what was your actual role in the business?
Well,
everything.
Everything. So.
What was your favourite role, or the one thing that you enjoyed most?
What I enjoyed the most was actually seeing it. Getting it in your hands at the end of the month, and you'd open it up and you'd go, this was good. I mean, doing. One thing that anybody who knows the magazine or just reads motorcycle magazines is probably going to say, when you get to go to those international launches and you get to ride the new bikes and all this, and they were very. I've got very mixed feelings about those because often you'd spend as much time on an aeroplane as you did on the ground overseas. So you'd go away for 6 days and you'd spend 3 days in the air, and then you'd be riding a bike, jet lagged, wrong time zone. Racetrack you'd never seen before, trying to extract the best out of the bike, in an environment where you've been told there's 15 of these in the world and please don't crash one. So you've got all these things going. Yeah, no pressure, but there's none of these. We've got no spare parts, boys, but no pressure. So you look back at some of those and you think, yeah, they're fantastic. You go the other way too, and you think, yeah, they were, as you say, a lot of pressure and a lot of time, and sometimes, you know, I remember one time I was invited to Germany to ride a BMW, and BMW had organised to, after the actual launch of the bike, to go to a place called Hecklinger, where they had an off-road training area for their adventure bikes, and then we'd get to do this training course the next day, which everybody was more than happy about. You know, it sounded like a lot of fun, but what it meant was we had to catch a bus after the launch, so we had to leave the bikes in wherever we were and get on this bus for about 3 or 4 hours to get to this other end, and then I had to, because of the timing and because of the way, what we'd done is we'd decided to delay the magazine, and I would try and send the story back from overseas. Now that's so easy these days. In those days it wasn't quite so simple. This was way before iPhones and way before
So how was that done?
Well, from memory, I had to use a technology called GPRS on my Nokia to connect my
the bricks.
to connect my laptop to my. To be honest, I can't really remember exactly how I did it, but I did the research, and I got into this hotel room at like 10 p.m. local time. I filed the story at midnight local time. I'm absolutely shattered out of my eyeballs with tiredness. Finally got the story off. It made it back to Australia. It got published, and then the bike got delayed, and you couldn't buy one for over 6 months after we published the story anyway. So it's that sort of thing that sort of you think, oh, why did I go to all that effort? If I was delayed in a month, who would have cared?
Oh, geez.
So yeah, that's.
So there was a bit of was there a bit of pressure on you, like image-wise, like to always have the best bike?
Oh, if there was, I never noticed it because most of the time I didn't even own a bike.
Really?
No, I didn't need one. I'm going to go somewhere, make a phone call, go get a bike.
Oh yeah, of course.
You know, it was great. So yeah, a lot of the time, no. In actual fact, most of the time I ran the magazine, I owned old bikes, relatively old bikes. So yeah, I didn't bother with that. We did go through a few. We had a few project bikes which we'd often buy so that we could modify them and do bits and pieces. But the plan was always to buy them, do the stuff, and then sell them, and that's what we did.
So you like? I mean, it sounds pretty exciting to me, that sort of lifestyle. So you had
better than working for a living.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know quite a few men that would absolutely love that kind of lifestyle. But so the magazine lasted until the last issue was December 2017.
By the time we got to 2017, we decided to experiment. We started to make a TV show back in 2013. We'd been making these TV shows for the smaller digital channels, and through a bit of shuffling, we ended up producing Rapid magazine for its owner, for its publisher, who couldn't find an editor to do it. So anyway, they offered it to us, and we said, okay, well, we'll do that for a while. And we were doing that, and then we decided to do Cycle Talk every second month, because Rapid magazine was every second month. So we'd be able to produce a magazine each month, and just keep punching them out that way. So we'd have them on alternate, months. But then, pretty well, just only a few months after that, we made that decision to do that in 2017, because that would also free us up with enough time to make the TV show. The editor didn't any money. It was a problem in that sense. It just wasn't profitable. So we killed it, and that sort of left us with the revenues only coming in every second month and the TV show. And then in 2017, the industry took a big dive as well.
So is that due to the internet and what's happening there, where everyone's going on the internet and getting the same information that you get? I mean, I'm a very tactile person, so I like the idea of a magazine, but, I guess the way that today is, having the advantage of the internet, you can get so much more information. And
I think it depends a lot on what sort of information you're seeking. If you if you want to find out who's got the cheapest chains and sprockets, you can just Google that. You can find it out, or you can jump on Google and you can find the phone number of all the bike shops in the local area. Prior to the internet being so ubiquitous, people would pick up a magazine, they'd flip through it, and they'd find some phone numbers in the back. It was better to be advertising with Google and that. And I totally get that. If you're searching for a particular thing, the first thing you want to do is search. You don't want to just be flicking through a magazine. So flicking through a magazine and being tactile is great if you want to sit down, shoulders back, and learn something, read something, enjoy something. But if you're seeking out particular information, magazines aren't great for that, because they're too hard to search. They're too hard to go and do that, and that's why Google, in that sense, has dominated it.
So you wound that right down the magazine to the extent where it was no longer income.
Well, it was getting to the stage where, well, basically, the problem was we couldn't get enough revenue out of it every second month to afford to pay the rent, to pay staff, to cover the print bill, phone bill, car, towing, regos, all that sort of stuff. The TV show, we couldn't attract as much interest in that as we had, because the TV station we originally started, it literally went broke. So our free-to-air broadcaster went broke. So we were only available through Foxtel, which put off some of our advertisers, and we had to drop the rates, and so we couldn't make as much money out of that. And that's very, very labour intensive, because you're making it in 8-week blocks of half-hour shows. It takes an awful lot of work to produce 30 minutes of television. It really does. It takes a lot to shut down and that sort of things. Now I've just got the legal side of it to shut down.
And that's pretty hefty, going through all that legalities, isn't it? Like,
it's not much fun. It's not much fun at all. But it's interesting, having found work outside the motorcycle industry and outside editorial. So I'm working in marketing more now. It's I'm sort of on the other side, and it's interesting in that all of a sudden you don't miss it as much, because you are doing something else, and you're getting paid, and it's like, wow, money again, which I didn't get for a number of months. And even then, as the magazine was in decline, I had to cut the salary, so I wasn't earning much over the last few years anyway. And I'm not earning heaps now, but I'm not. That's okay, sort of building it back up again. And that's one of the things that I noticed was your mood and your attitude and everything. When everything is going down, it's hard to stay buoyant and positive when you're just seeing decline. And I've sort of turned around the corner a little bit there, and it's now sort of things are progressing up, which is where you want them to go. And it's a lot easier to feel better about everything that's going on around you when you're sort of feeling that there's a bit of progress.
so if you, I'm sure there'd be people out there watching tonight that have gone through a similar situation where perhaps they've had their own business and had to wind it down, or they've lost a business, they're at that stage where they're unemployed, after having a great business, a successful business, and, suddenly now it's declined and they're searching for a way through this. What sort of a message of hope would you give someone that's listening tonight that's maybe going through that situation? Because to me, you seem very positive, but then I've not been around probably at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're ripping your hair out, wondering what you're going to do next. We only see what we see.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
don't see behind the scenes.
Yeah, look, it's been interesting. I mean, in the process of winding the business up, I've spoken to people who do this as part of their job of like lawyers and accountants and this sort of thing, and a couple of them have said to me that for many people in that business situation, closing the business down is actually the most relieving thing that happens, because they can put a line in the sand and move on from that. And
did you feel that?
well, I'm not there yet because I'm still in a lot of
dealing.
that process, but I can see why that happens. Yeah, because the magazine, you know, I was living with that deadline, that monthly deadline, pretty well for 18 years. I mean, there was a few times where I was able to leave it with other people, but basically I was there for 18 years. And in a way you miss it, but in a way you really don't. So yeah, look, it's a really interesting thing, but I think, you know, if the business really is bad, if the business is going, there's no point looking over your shoulder. There's no point in 2020 hindsight, which I was really, really good at. If only I'd done this, if only I'd done that. Fact is, I didn't do those things. Fact is that you know, time marches on, and it's time to look for something else. And the big problem is, of course, there's a lot of blokes like me in the 50s. You know, if you become out of work in your 50s, there's a good chance you won't get any more work. And that was something I was looking at down the barrel of too. But then again, if you look at your skills and you look at your experience and you try and work out who that can help, you know, that's where you can start to work towards finding other work. I mean, one guy I know working at a printer, he's got 4 trade certificates, all of which are defunct.
Wow.
You know, so he could not do his trade because all 4 of his things have all been replaced by computer technology. And to a certain extent, I was the same. I was like, for a little while there, I was thinking, well, you know, with all the demise in the newspaper industry and the magazine industry, there's plenty of journalists out there without work. So getting journalism work is really tough. I actually applied for a part-time journalist job earlier this year. Didn't even get a reply. You know, that much experience.
Sad,
that much experience, and I can't even get an interview. Photography is the same. Photography, you know, everybody's got a digital camera, so professional photography is a really hard gig. I thought I might get some skills for the video and the photography, the video, but again, it's a really, really competitive environment, so it's really hard. So, but combining all those with the marketing experience, the fact that I've sold ads and bought ads and things like that, all of a sudden it's like I found a company that needed someone to help with the marketing, and so I'm doing that as a contract job. So I'm in the position of being able to do that, get them up to speed, and then that'll be a couple of days a week, and then I'll be able to find something else for a couple of days a week, or, you know, do something there, and yeah, so things are sort of looking up in that.
So it's about looking at what you've got to offer.
Absolutely.
That's like really concentrate on that. So that'd be like a message that you would give someone.
Absolutely.
Tonight.
No, it's like what's your unique group of skills, and how can that apply to someone, and how can you use that to benefit another business, and therefore, you know, become employable because of that.
So each and every week I have some really wonderful people that come and join us and watch the show. So I'd like to say hi to Di Smithies, hi Vicky Taylor, Leanne Rugg, Tim Colachu, Ellen Morris, Vicky McGuinness, Tricia Hoffitz, Vince Sunter. Well, there you go, Vince. Hi. Yeah, so obviously I can't mention all of you tonight, but, you know, thank you so much for joining us. And it is about not giving up hope that, you know, no matter what the situation is, go and talk to someone, get some help. There's lots of organisations out there. You know, if you're really looking for someone to talk to and maybe you've lost your job and life hasn't been that kind to you and you might have just really got in a slump, you know, try and talk to a friend about it, or, you know, ring Lifeline, talk to someone like that. But really try and look within yourself and try and find the positives that you've got to offer, because I think that's very valuable information. So I'd like to say good night to you all, and to know that no matter what, don't give up and know you're going to be okay.